I am Trisha Berry. I'm the director of the Women in Engineering program, your host for our FabFems Friday webinar today. I'm excited. Today we are celebrating engineers in law. You can see on some of the past webinars that we have had on our FabFems Fridays. Those are all on our YouTube channel, so feel free to check those out if you missed those. We have one more that's coming up next Friday, and that will wrap us up for this fall semester. I am going to stop sharing so that we can get to see all of our fabulous panelists here, and we will get going. The way this will work is I have just a couple of questions for them to get us started. And then what we really want to do is get to your questions. So feel free to put your questions in that Q&A pod, and we'll have plenty of time to get to those as we go along. I'm going to let them each introduce themselves because they will do a much better job telling you their stories than I can. But we're going to start with hearing who we have here, who they are, where they're from, what their degrees are in, where they're at now. You heard already a little bit about some of their hobbies, but maybe they can tell you some of the things that they like to do outside of work as well to get us going. So Katherine, you want to kick us off?
Sure. I'm Katherine Sandhop. I graduated from UT with a mechanical engineering degree in 2013. Do I tell you what my job is now, or?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, I'm a construction litigation consultant at Veritas Advisory Group. So I am not a lawyer. Nobody at my firm has law degrees. We work with and for lawyers on construction cases. And I can go more into the detail of that later, but this is a job I got directly out of school through ECAC. I found it through UT, and I'm still doing it. And my hobbies are, I love sports, mostly baseball, mostly Astros, and I like doing creative things, calligraphy, hand lettering, chalkboard, recently got into board embroidery. Pre-pandemic, I liked live music and traveling. That's been shelved a little bit. But yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Thank you. Evelyn, who are you?
Hi, everybody. My name is Evelyn Chen. I grew up in Houston and then came to UT for my undergraduate in electrical engineering. Thought that I was going to be an engineer because I loved it, and then somehow fell into a patent agent job right out of graduation, and ended up liking it enough to go to law school. And after a couple of turns at law firms, working with the courts, patent litigation primarily, I'm currently now back with my engineering roots at a telecommunications company called Ericsson. We provide the network equipment that builds out all the cellular networks for the various carriers like AT&T and Verizon. And I do in-house, patent commercialization. So supporting both our patent prosecution, which is the process of getting our patents to build our patent portfolio, as well as helping out with licensing those patents to people who want to use the technology. And so now I'm with Ericsson in Dallas.
Awesome. Thanks, Evelyn. Locke.
Hey, everyone. Hey, my name is Felix. I graduated from UT. Well, I guess I'll go back. I grew up in Austin, so I went to Westwood High School. If anyone else is from Austin, woohoo, go Warriors. Went to UT for computer engineering, electrical engineering, and graduated in 2012. I moved to Houston to go to law school at University of Houston Law Center, interned here in Houston, and then, accepted my job here at a law firm called Shakardi and Bacon. And the first 4 years of my career, I did patent litigation. So kind of like everyone was saying, in the courtroom, not quite Suits-esque. There's a lot of ethical violations in that show, FYI. If you think that's what it's gonna be like, don't do a lot of stuff they do. But yeah, so I started out in patent litigation, so kind of litigating patents, and now I've moved over to patent prosecution, which Evelyn briefly mentioned, is really, I work with inventors or engineers, talk about their invention, and it's my job to type it up and make sure we've covered everything that's in their invention. As for fun stuff, I've really gotten into crocheting. along with embroidery a little bit, really got into crocheting during the pandemic. I've made a lot of baby blankets for babies that had been born like 4 months ago. I'm like, here's a baby blanket. I know it's really late. Yeah, I was making a lot of scarves in the summer, which is ridiculous in Texas. And composting. I started composting again, which was pretty exciting. So.
Very cool. All the things that we are discovering and adventuring into during this crazy time. That's awesome. All right. Well, let's hear a little bit more. Maybe we break this next question into a couple of parts. Let's start with why you chose your engineering major. I know we have a number of high school students who are joining in to hear about career pathways and pathways into engineering. So maybe we just start with each of you on what made you decide to head into electrical engineering or mechanical engineering as you were heading into your undergrad space. Any of y'all can start. We can go backwards if you want to go that way. Pollock, you want to go?
Sure, yeah, I can start. I sort of have the opposite story of a lot of people. When I was in middle school, it was pretty clear to everyone in my family that I was going to become a lawyer. Everyone was, I was reading John Grisham books, and I was like, this is the career path I want. And in high school, I always liked math, but then I took calculus and just loved it, like was reading ahead. And I just, my dad's an engineer, and I think I just didn't want to be an engineer because he's an engineer, which is ridiculous. And so he said, humor me. And guess what? He took me to Girls' Day at UT. And I was like, I love this. And he was like, I know, I told you would. And then I was kind of at a crossroads. You can't do engineering and be a lawyer. That's not a thing, but it very much is. And so that's kind of, I went into engineering knowing that I was going to go to law school. And as for the discipline, it was kind of a process of elimination, to be honest. I really hate chemistry. It's not my jam. I don't really love physics. And so if you take out a lot of that, software is kind of where I ended up, which is maybe not the response that everybody has, but I think chemical engineering is way too hard and things with a lot of physics. Mechanical engineering, I couldn't do it to save my life. So that's kind of how I landed there.
Awesome. I'm sure many feel that. And I think that's great for people to understand that sometimes process of elimination is a great way to get to that point. That's cool. Evelyn, what about you?
Well, let's see. I decided to do engineering because one, math and science didn't seem horrible, even though English was my much better class in high school. I wanted something where I could easily find a job. I will admit to being very mercenary about this. And then I stumbled into computer programming in high school. And this was the 90s, so it wasn't nearly as popular then as it is now. And I loved programming. And so when it came to engineering, I was like, well, that's pretty obvious. Maybe I should just do computer and electrical engineering. What really cemented it, probably like Pollock a little bit, Orgo and I do not mix. Sorry, Trisha, to you, all the chemies out there, and my husband, who's a chemie. Organic chemistry and I just was not happening. And so I figured I'd just go with what I liked and what I was good at. And that's how I ended up in electrical engineering.
Awesome. And for those of you that are not familiar, I am a chemical engineer. But I'm a chemical engineer who in college determined that I really didn't like chemistry that much, but I could still be a good chemical engineer and chemistry wasn't my thing. So it's all good. Katherine.
Yeah, so like I said earlier, I studied mechanical engineering. I chose it because, well, first I guess I chose engineering. Growing up, I always loved problem solving and puzzles, and I tended to do better in my math and science classes, but a lot of it was like too theoretical for me. Like when I was doing like biology and chemistry, I was like, what am I going to do with this? I don't know. And so that's why engineering really attracted me, because it was practical solutions to real world problems and it was applicable. And I also I also wanted a job. I also figured that my father was also an engineer. but he hadn't been doing engineering since, 5 years after he graduated. So I also knew that there were paths to different career opportunities if you had an engineering degree. And I chose mechanical because it was the most broad. And I also did a semi elimination game where I was like, chemistry, no, electrical, no. And I was like, okay, well, I applied for civil or mechanical, and I ended up choosing mechanical. And that really helped, especially because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I knew that if I got a mechanical engineering degree, that like, even if I stayed in a more traditional engineering path, that I would still have a lot of different opportunities. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's talk. You each kind of mentioned a little bit in your introductions and into how you kind of navigated into the spaces that you're in now, but maybe talk a little bit more about your career path into law, and then talk a little bit about what you do. Like, what does it mean to do your job? Maybe talk about some examples, or what does a project look like in your world? Evelyn, you want to start this time?
Sure. So I, like a lot of things in my life, and Trisha knows all of this, so I'm being completely honest. She will call BS on if I say anything that she does not remember. But I got into law completely by accident. Did a summer internship at IBM. First day, I walk into the lab, and my mentor's on the phone, and he's just yelling at whoever the poor guy is on the other end of the line. Slams the phone down, because that's when we still have phones. That people would pick up in the lab, and like, this guy is such an idiot. And it turns out that he was talking to an in-house IBM patent lawyer who was trying to write up a patent application for this invention that he submitted. And I was always kind of curious, well, what would make this poor guy on the other end of the line want to put up with this abuse? And my mentor seems pretty smart, so I don't know why he couldn't understand it. I later realized that, when you submit an invention disclosure and you actually want your company to value it for you and decide whether or not they want to pursue a patent, you need to write more than just one sentence describing your invention. I mean, Trisha, you've seen this, when you were in industry, you know what this is like. And so, but I was curious, and, get to my senior year, I thought I was going to be an engineer. And then after talking with some people in ECAC, and also with the then dean, because I was working in his office, they put me in contact with some lawyers in Austin to kind of explain to me what patent law is and what a patent is. That meeting turned up into a job offer to work at a law firm in Austin, and I took it. I graduated in 2001. It was not a good time to be a graduate coming out. And so I figured I'd try. If I liked it, I go to law school. If I didn't, I'd go back for my master's in double E. Again, very, practical mercenary. Which one am I going to get a job that will pay me so I can survive? And I ended up loving it. I loved working, and what I was doing was the patent prosecution side. And so it's the patent, you're working with inventors to describe their inventions, like Pollock said. And I loved it. You're talking with I worked with professors, with people at large companies, or even just solo home inventors. And this is their life's work. And you're trying to understand it. And you basically are learning and playing with new technology, but you don't have to debug or test. If you don't understand it, you just go back and ask them again. It's fabulous. You play with technology, with the latest and greatest, and no one's criticizing you for why it works or doesn't work. It's great. And then you work with a patent office trying to explain it and explain how this is new and novel, and darn it, your client deserves to get a patent on it. And it was so much fun. So I figured, if I like that, let's go to law school. Came out of law school, and then I got more into patent litigation. And I did both patent prosecution and litigation when I was at a law firm in Dallas. And it was good because prosecution, like I said, you play with the latest and greatest. But litigation, you're playing with the old stuff. And if you get on the fun cases that matter to your major, like for me, some of my first cases were on the favorite functionality of Internet Explorer. So again, this is where the tech, pack rat side of me comes out. I'm digging out my old Netscape browsers or my old laptops and computers, trying to prove that this patent was not new, shouldn't have been granted. And it's kind of really looking back at technology that you may actually have had the chance to experience and know, or technology that fascinates you, but you've never had a chance to really get a deep understanding of. Like, just, sorry, I'm telling too many stories, but one story, one case that I touched was about contact lenses. And it was about the shape. You would never realize it, but there are patents on the shape and the curvature and the edges of contact lenses. And there are medical studies on how harmful particular edges could be to your eye. After that case, I promised myself I would never go to sleep in my contact lenses ever again. Just no. And so you never know what you will find that will touch your life. And it's been really a lot of fun. So while I was at the firm, I did a lot of different technologies like contact lenses, consumer electronics, medical stuff. And now that I'm with Ericsson, I focus very much on cellular technologies, things relating to communications. And so now I probably know a little bit more about how my phone works than I ever wanted to. Also appreciate more about what it takes for digital rights management and how Netflix is able to stream its content to my phone or into my computers and know that it's me, and how they're able to do it without too much buffering. And so it's been a lot of fun. And I will shut up.
That's awesome. The examples are amazing and fascinating. So thank you for sharing all of that. All right. Pollock, you want to share about your experiences and examples?
Yeah, no, I'd love to. Yeah, I think, as I said, I knew I was going to become a lawyer. And it's so hard to describe sometimes what we do, because it really is the intersection of writing and critical thinking and engineering. And those two actually go really well together in a way that, I think you can kind of pick out lawyers who are engineers as well, because we have sort of we break things down into different pieces and attack them that way. But I think, an example that kind of showed me in engineering that I was, this was probably the career path for me, is I interned at National Instruments in Austin, and they were like, we want you to do this little feature, code it up, but before you do that, we want you to draft up a technical specification document. And so by the time I was done with it, there were images, there were sections. And my mentor, pulled me aside and he said, we've never had an engineer spend this much time and enjoy spending this much time writing up a document on a feature, trying a piece of code. And so he knew that I wanted to go to law school and was like, I think this is a good idea for you. I think you really enjoy this. This is probably the task for you. And that's really kind of how it's turned out. And when I did patent litigation, there's a lot of different pieces to it for sure, but probably the most exciting, and especially being, someone with a technical background who gets to work on that type of work, is that you get to do, what we call an infringement analysis. So patents have, if you would pull up any random patent, if you want to, you can do it now on Google Patents and look at the bottom. The last page is going to have what we call claims, and it's sort of, what are the bounds of this, of your intellectual property, right? What are the bounds of what you're trying to get to kind of have a monopoly on? And so your job a lot of times is to look at, either you're looking at somebody else's products and saying, you know what, they're doing what these claims say, or you're defending against someone asserting a patent against you and saying, our product definitely does not do this. And there's a lot of, the words, what do the words mean? How do we define them? And which way, do we look at the patent? Do we look at something outside? And in the process of that, you get some really cool experiences. You get to work with experts. And when I say experts, I mean titans of industry. One of the cases I worked on was video games. And it's a very large video game company. And I got to work with, we're talking about, these legacy video games, the guy who created it, right? He's our expert, and he's talking to me, and we're talking about strategies. And so that's very exciting, right? And then through the course of the litigation, you get to go up in front of a judge and tell them, look, this is what this term means, and this is why my client's position is right. And it's exciting for sure. And the flip side is prosecution, which Evelyn definitely touched on, and that's kind of what I do now, more on a day-to-day basis. And the idea, she talked about invention disclosure. When you're an engineer and you work for a company, they're going to kind of solicit, hey, if you have an idea, type it up really quickly, tell us what you think. We'll determine whether it's worth spending all the money and time to get a patent. And then they'll reach out to someone like me who works for a firm, and it's really my job. I talk to the inventors, say, hey, what's your idea? And then I draft it up. And that's, you know, like Evelyn said, you're really talking to people where this is their baby, this is the thing that they've invented, and it's exciting that it's your job to sort of flesh it out and put it into words. And kind of one other part of my practice that I'll briefly go into, because I know I'm talking for a really long time too, is I've been working on a lot of privacy and data security. So I've been certified in the US and in the European Union, and I'm happy to talk to anyone who's interested. I don't think you even have to be an attorney to do any of these things. And it's a great career path. You can just Google, data breach, and you're going to see a million things pop up. So it's really the future that we're looking into, and it's a very emerging area of law that's underdeveloped in the United States. And so that's been really cool. I get to work with our clients, and they're like, we want to do this. Is it HIPAA compliant? And it's kind of my job to figure it out or tell them, this is what you need to do. This is how you're going to do it. So having that engineering background is very valuable, and you kind of see these interesting intersections between, I understand the technology, but you need someone who also understands the law. So, sorry, my long-winded answer.
No, it's fabulous. That's super helpful. Katherine, what about you?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, I'm not a lawyer. I didn't go to law school, and nobody in my firm did. So basically what we are is, my firm is about 30 people, split into 2 offices in Dallas and Houston. And about 2/3 of us are engineering construction, and 1/3 is business, accounting, finance. And so on the engineering construction side, all of us have some sort of engineering degree, usually mechanical or civil, or some of the people who went to A&M, I know they have different, like construction sciences, engineering, I don't know. But we have some sort of that kind of engineering degree. And then some people have gotten their MBA. I have not. But basically what we do is we're consultants. We work with lawyers that represent somebody in the construction field. So we work on construction cases where something goes wrong, which thankfully something always does. So we stay in business. But it could be pretty much any type of construction with the exception of like single residential, pretty much anything that's big enough to warrant hiring an expert witness on. So that would be, big apartment complexes, pipelines, chemical plants, hospitals, universities, literally any roads, anything that's being built and something goes not according to plan. And we'll work for the owner, the general contractor, the subcontractor. We'll work for any entity party. And so what we're hired to do is basically to figure out what happened and why and who's at fault and who owes who what money or who owes who what time. And we do that by looking at documents from top to bottom, beginning to end of a project, starting with the contract and going through to schedules and schedule updates and daily reports and weather reports and literally anything that we can piece together to tell the story. And that's what we do. And if we can be on the side of the party who's at fault or the party who's seeking money or whatever. And so, like, say we're on the losing side of it. Basically, our job is also to say, to make sure that our client is only paying what they actually are at fault for or are responsible for. We don't want them to overpay or so that's what we do. And there are different, oops, sorry, my little post.
I can edit that out.
Like a little Post-it that's taped and I untape it.
That never happened in my Zoom editing world. It's all good. This whole little section gone.
Um, but yeah, we have like different levels of how we're involved, because a lot of the things that we do don't get to trial. I've been here for 6.5 years, if I've done my math correctly, and maybe 7, I don't know. But I just experienced my first trial 2 months ago. And it wasn't even a case that I was on majorly. I was only helping with like smaller parts of it. But luckily, a lot of it was on Zoom because of the pandemic. So I was actually able to listen to parts of it and see kind of how it all went, which is something I wouldn't have had a chance to do if it had been in the courthouse. But we do lots of report writing and working with the lawyers who hire us to talk about, strategy or best way to go about something, or can they feasibly settle? Does it need to go any further? So stuff like that. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think a few of the things, just to summarize some commonalities and things to point out to our participants, we've heard a lot about communication, the importance of communication and writing and translating information to different audiences, different stakeholders, and how important that is in this space. And I think we know it translates into other spaces of engineering as well, not just law. So making sure that you're able to write well and speak well and using those problem solving skills in a way to make those connections to other people, other technologies, other spaces can be really valuable, especially in this space, but really in all areas you might head into. Well, we have 4 questions that have come in already. So thank you, students, for doing that. And please keep them coming in. I'm going to start with this. I'm not going to go in order because I want to start with one that we just touched on a little bit with your answers about some of the possible career paths that engineers can take without a law degree. And you just heard Katherine's pathway, and Felix mentioned the data breach side of things, but maybe if any of you have something to share and answer that with maybe some other career paths that we haven't talked about yet, or other ideas that students might consider.
Sure, I can start with that. One possible path is actually what I did right after graduation, which is working for a law firm and working as a technical advisor or a patent agent. And this really is going into that, directly into that intersection of engineering and law, because under the way the US rules are, you, without a law degree, can help somebody get a patent as long as you take an examination that is put on by the US Patent and Trademark Office. If you pass that examination, then you become a registered patent agent. That's just somebody who has passed the exam without a law degree. And you can do anything a patent attorney can do when it comes to applying for patent applications. So if you want to be able to work in that particular area without making that 3-year investment in time and tuition fees of law school, that is definitely a path to go down. The salary difference, I will be honest, is different, and it's actually quite a bit different. But again, you're offsetting 3 years of education, and depending on what your preferences are for yourself, as well as your personal situation, that might be a good path. Because honestly, if you're not interested in going on court or trying to find out if life really isn't like any of those courtroom dramas, as a patent litigator, it's a good option. Something else you could consider, which is, you don't know if you really want to be learning all these different types of technology. Seems like you're always, sometimes you can have, 5 or 10 different technology applications on your desk when you're working as a patent agent. You can also take the other route if you still want to work with patents and apply directly with the Patent and Trademark Office. They have several locations around the country, including a location in Dallas as one of the regional offices. And they hire engineers straight out of undergrad and grad school to become what they call patent examiners. And these are the people who work at the patent office and are the ones who actually review the patent applications that lawyers like Pollock and myself would send in to describe their clients' inventions. And they dig through documents and publications and try to see, and they're the ones in charge of gatekeeping to only allow patents that truly are new to issue. So that's something you can do. And you're usually, when you're a patent examiner, you are assigned to a particular technology area. So if, say, your primary focus in class, in school, was semiconductors, or, you know, if you're a civil engineering on traffic management or something like that, they will put you in an art unit. That's what they call the technology units, an art unit specifically for that. And that would be all you would focus on. That's something that you might be interested in doing. That's another option to do without a law degree. You will be on the federal government pay scale, which for some people might be a very good, consistent career path. You may be subject to government shutdowns because it is the federal government, not state government. But, you know, I can tell you government benefits, healthcare and all that, very good. But those are two options. But the eventually more lucrative option is what Katie talked about. And sometimes you might, depending on the technology area you're in, whether you're a double E or a mechanical or civil engineer, the requirements for those experts can be different. Some areas, they prefer to see more direct in-industry experience before you go into the kind of testifying the expert route. And some, if you just join a firm like Katie's, where it's all experts, those are more acceptable and welcome. It just depends, but that is also another good option.
All right.
I feel like Evelyn covered it. I mean, that's kind of it. The only thing I'll say about being a patent examiner, which is really interesting, is that is kind of sought after by firms too. It's interesting to be, you're kind of in the seat of the judge because you're the one that's negotiating that process on behalf of the federal government. So then if you want to come out and work for a private law firm and be on the other side of that negotiation saying, hey, it's my client that wants that, that can be kind of a feather in your cap. So, but Evelyn, I don't know, she covered it all, pros and cons, everything.
So we have a related question that is asking about career paths for engineers interested in law that aren't patent or IP related. And Katherine spoke to that in her space, but are there some others that come to mind?
I just talk politics. If you want to go first, go for it. Or I can jump in.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's fine. What's the question again? Is it what other areas of law there are, or?
It's interested in law, but not patent law or intellectual property law. So are there other good pathways for engineers that make sense with that technical background? And knowing that you can go into any kind of law when you get there, but are there some maybe where it makes sense with that problem solving space, or some that you're aware of?
I don't know. I don't know if I would say there's any other area of law that engineers are well suited for in particular. And maybe Evelyn kind of has a different take on it. I think certainly something like data privacy is very interesting because there is a lot of technology involved, and it's very much on the cutting edge because we haven't figured out how to do that well. So I think that would be a potentially lucrative area to go into. And while you don't have to have a technical degree, I think it's a huge bonus that you can kind of have on your side. I don't know. Other than that, I think, well, there's also things like product liability. So the firm that I work for does a lot of product liability, and what that really means is things like, if you have a knee replacement, that device that goes in your body, it can be defective, or people are claiming it's defective when it's actually not. That's lawyers speak for, we can't take a position either way. But so product liability, you have to understand how the devices work and the science behind it. And so I think you can see a lot of maybe hard science. I think backgrounds, I've seen people who have like a degree in biology or chemistry can kind of gravitate towards those areas as well. Although again, it's not necessary, but I think it could be helpful, especially if you're interested in the medical device space. I think that could be something that you could leverage your engineering background well.
Awesome. Well, let's go to kind of a different couple of questions. So we have a couple of questions that I'm going to kind of lump together. What are some organizations or internships or advice heading into industry, maybe before heading into law school, or things that might help you prepare as you head into that space?
My answer is not, you guys are going to all laugh. My response to that is find something that you're interested in and enjoy, because what law schools look for in the applications, and then what law firms and other people who would hire engineers turned lawyers look for, is diversity in interests. They don't want to all hire everybody who had a poli-sci major, who all did mock trial or debate or moot court. They want a variety, and and ultimately what your activities and your jobs will indicate to them is where an indication of your interests. So you don't want to be locked into something that you don't enjoy and have people assume that you enjoy, because that's what you did. It's harder to trying to get out of that than it is to get into it. If you already have something on your resume. So I would say, I saw that question too, Trisha. I would say find something you enjoy and can be passionate about, because you're going to want to be something that you are willing to talk about, like you're invested in it and that you believe in it at an interview, or when you're writing up a short personal statement describing yourself to give a law school a better overall impression of you rather than just numbers or your resume. I have a whole spiel about, maximizing your law school application, which we won't go into here, but I would say just be true to yourself, find something you enjoy.
I mean, as somebody who didn't go to law school and doesn't plan to, I think that my advice, because I know there are high schoolers in here too watching, and my advice always, or if you're like a freshman in college and you're still trying to figure out how to kind of structure your time, my advice is always the same. It's find something you really like. But I also was really particular in the things that I chose when I was in college to be involved in, because it's so easy, especially in engineering, to get wrapped up in only engineering. And so I found it really important to find a couple of organizations or things to do that weren't related to engineering, and it could be like a creative outlet for me. So like for me, I was in the basketball band for my 4.5 years at school. And I had an on-campus job at UTWEP, and I was also involved in the Mechanical Engineering Association. But I found it really important to kind of pick a few things that were important to me, but also to diversify so that I wasn't in one small world my whole time at school. And I think that is applicable for if you're a high schooler about to come into college, trying to think about how to be involved. And it's also important when you're getting a job, like even if you're not going to apply for law school, I think it's important to, and not just to impress people, but also for your sanity, and to enjoy your time at school and take advantage of it. Because there's so many opportunities, especially at a place like UT, that it would be such a shame to not really take advantage.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with that. I think and Katherine kind of touching on it, but part of it is finding a support system. So pick organizations you're interested in the cause, but you don't realize it. I didn't realize it. I mean, I met Trisha when I was like a baby freshman, right? And I kept in contact. Evelyn, I met through SWE, and that was many, many moons ago. And so I think in college, I didn't realize that this is a network that I'm building, and I can kind of have support from these people. And I say that, I know we're kind of talking in the context of law school, and I think you'll find that your network is bigger and broader than you maybe give it credit for. So I kind of joined SWE, was interested in diversity for engineering, and that's how I met Evelyn. And Evelyn is one of the first, actual practicing lawyers, IP lawyers that I had really ever met. And so I think keeping in mind, use your interest to maybe get to where you want to go, and you'll be surprised at how far it will take you. And you just can't know when you're starting out how that's gonna, I think everyone was like, I think I may have joined the pre-law organization, but it's just at the time, that's not really what I wanted to do. So it was not going to be of any use to me. So I say, yeah, stay with what you're interested in.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's great advice, and I'm gonna use that to answer these two questions that are in here. And we've got one in the chat I'm gonna come back to, and then we got to wrap up because we're at time. But the two questions in the chat, I think, relate exactly to what y'all have talked about. It doesn't necessarily matter what your major is. It doesn't matter necessarily what that degree is if you want to head into these spaces. Mm-hmm. Do the things that you enjoy. If you love engineering and you're loving your chemical engineering, or you want to move into environmental engineering, at the end of the day, which of those engineering majors, same as VME, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. It even doesn't matter if you want to go into other industries, to be honest. It's do what you're enjoying, do what you are liking, get that degree, and then you have that diversity of experiences through your organizations and all of the other things that you're involved in that are going to take you where you want to go in these law spaces, if that's where you choose. So don't get necessarily caught up in which is the right one to get me where I need to go, because that's not going to make you happy. It's going to stress you out. Do what you enjoy, show that diversity of experiences, take Evelyn's class down the road on how to make a great application, and off you go. But I do want to come to this one in the chat.
Can I
go ahead.
One quick thing, sorry. Just kind of going back to what Evelyn was saying about being sort of ruthless in looking at like job prospects. I do think it would help to maybe look into just like maybe look at a job posting for a law firm, like someone who's right out of school, or look for like what we call interns in legal speak, we call them summer associates. Look for what they're looking for, because I think the thing that's a little different, and it's true in engineering, but especially in the legal field, I think you'll find that certain industries are in different cities. And so maybe you're not interested in living in that city, but that's kind of where all the hot stuff is, right? Or what you're kind of envisioning. So maybe that's like something worth looking into, look at job postings, see what they're looking for, just to kind of get an idea of long-term where you might end up or could see yourself going. So.
Great advice. Thank you. So this last question, and then we'll come to your final tips for everybody. How is AI affecting the way law is practiced? Maybe one of you want to take that one, and then we'll move to close it up.
Ooh, that's a toughie. AI and law is an interesting question that I think a lot of lawyers and experts are debating right now because of the ethics and the responsibility to your clients that a lawyer has, and how much control you have over AI. And so that is a constantly evolving topic. Some of the more likely areas we're likely to see AI in right now may be in areas that could be more subject to automation, like when you're trying to review documents and you're trying to find a document. AI is just a fancier search tool to help you locate that one document that you want to find for a litigation. For mergers and acquisitions, business corporate transactions, AI could help with modeling the potential outcomes based on a set of scenarios. I'm sure the experts use it all the time as they're trying to come up with the different scenarios, especially when it comes to financial modeling, and trying to project out what a damages model might be, or trying to advise clients on liability and potential exposure. So those are the kind of the more areas we're starting to see, or at least I'm starting to see it in. But whether it could actually come into, say, helping you draft an agreement or a will, or anything more complex, I think that is very much still up in the air as far as I know.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Well, let's wrap up with maybe a tip or word of wisdom that you have for all these fabulous students that are here with us. Any of you can start.
I can go. I think I might just copy a piece of advice that actually Anna gave me at UTWEP in my senior year. I was really, really stressed a lot about like trying to find the right job and the right thing, and I needed to be on the right path right after I graduated. And she was just like, you're trying to hold on to things too tightly. Like, it's just stop that, one. And two, you can do anything for a year. She was like, you just need to get a job. And if you don't like it, just do it for a year and move on. And so that really released a lot of stress for me. And it allowed me to go and really just kind of have a more open mind when I was looking for jobs, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know this job existed 3 months before I graduated. And so I got very lucky and found it. And then the Career Center does have a wide range of opportunities for UT engineers. And I luckily, I liked what I did, so I didn't have to move on. But just that one little piece of advice in my senior year, it meant the world and changed the way I was approaching things, because she was right. I was just grasping so tight. And but yeah, that's my advice. Anna's advice.
Thank you.
I think I'll jump in to kind of build on what Katherine was saying. I think if I could go back and do college all over again, the biggest thing I would do differently is probably seek help from like a mental professional. And I don't mean that, lightly. I think we talk about college, in the movies and in conversations, it's like this rainbow and unicorn time of your life where you're just partying and having fun. And nobody likes to talk a lot about what Katherine was talking. I felt like that for a lot of my 4 years, was super stressed out and really convinced that my grade in this class was going to make or break my career for the rest of my life, which is, I think in college, it's easy to live in a little microcosm that makes you think the next grade or the next project is going to make or break you forever. And so I think talking to someone or seeking help, even if it's your support group, whatever, if it's Anna, which is great that, she was there to act as that person for you. But I mean, I think, if you get hurt, you go to the SSB and say, right, I need a Band-Aid, I need stitches, I need whatever. But we're really hesitant to do that in the mental health aspect of things. And it's stressful to be an engineer. It's stressful to be, a minority in engineering. It's stressful to be female, LGBTQ. There's so many different aspects of what we bring to being an engineer, and it's hard to talk about. And so I think if I could go back, I would maybe, set up a therapy session with someone at UT and have them kind of straighten me out and say, this isn't the end of the world. You're going to be fine. It may not look the way that you planned, because I've walked in and said, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, and this is exactly what's going to happen. And things never go according to plan. But having someone tell you that that's okay, you're going to get to where you want to go, is really important, and something that as I've gotten older, I've learned is necessary. And this is pre-pandemic. I would have given this advice. During the pandemic, it's like magnified at 10 times. Take care of yourself, do self-care. And if that's therapy, then go ahead and do it. I think it's really important. I think Katherine's right. Be creative, be open-minded about, again, how you're going to get from point A to B. Evelyn herself, right? She's a lawyer, but she did kind of the patent agent route. And I think I was really closed-minded when I was in engineering. So staying open-minded and thinking I don't have to do what everyone else thinks is the next step. There's a lot of steps in between that can be really meaningful experiences. And the last thing, I think because I knew I was going to law school, I maybe shied away from some of the tougher classes. I was like, I'm not going to need to know, and that, looking back, I should have, maybe my GPA would have taken a hit, but it's a valuable time for you to learn, really emerging technologies. You're at UT, it's a powerhouse, right? For engineering, you've got really smart people who are teaching you these emerging areas, and you'd be surprised that 5, 6, 10 years later, you still remember the stuff you learned in classes. So maybe branch out and take an artificial intelligence class, right? Take a machine learning, there's a lot of emerging technologies. Take advantage of the 4 years you have, and really branch out.
Awesome, thank you. All right, Evelyn.
Gosh, hard acts to follow here, but I think what I have is also very similar to that, which is be thoughtful and curious. It doesn't matter if you end up staying engineering or you end up wanting to go into law or something else, but always be curious. As you can tell a little bit from my story, I don't think I ended up anywhere in any step of my career where I thought I would be. And I mean, I never thought I'd be in law school. I swore up and down I'd never take the LSAT or the MCAT. MCAT, I'm holding fast to at this point. But you just never know. So, you know, like everyone has said, if you see something that interests you, explore that. But that's where the thoughtful comes in. Know what you will want to do if this doesn't pan out like you hope it will, and be prepared for that. That will help get you through, you know, a semester of classes that end up being not what you hope for, but you know, you can survive with friends, with a support network. You know, as you're trying to decide on a career, same thing. Okay, I'm going to take this job and this is why. If I don't like it, you know, what bridges do I still have? Which doors am I keeping open? What is this in trying to find that, or at least recognize the possible open doors and open windows that they're out for you, instead of letting yourself fall complete victim to stress and worry. And I'm saying complete victim because we all will be victim to this, especially in 2020, because there's so much going on and so much that's out of our control. Meditation's been great for me. Keeping my husband out of my office has also been great, just to have a little bit of alone. I love the man to death. But just to have that time where you can just mentally center yourself and check in with yourself to be like, you know, am I okay? Is this where I want to be? Do I feel like myself? And if I don't, who do I talk to or what do I do before I go into some kind of downward spiral that is going to be harder to pull out of later? So like I said, really, it's just a repeat of what Katherine and Pollock have already said, but especially I think in 2020, that is not just applicable to your collegiate career or your graduate school career, but just life.
Awesome. Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you, Pollock. Thank you, Katherine. We could keep going on and on. I could ask you a lot more questions for sure, but I sure appreciate you all joining in and helping provide some insight into these fabulous careers in law and helping hopefully open our students' eyes a little bit more to those possibilities. So thank you all. Next week, we'll be back for our last FabFems Friday webinar with our Women in STEM organizations. So high schoolers, join back in then. Otherwise, have a fantastic weekend, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Trisha.
Thanks,
Bye.
y'all.
Good
It
to
was
see
so
y'all.
great seeing you all.
See you.
Have a great weekend.
Thanks.
You too.
You too.